Hey, so this video mainly focuses on the third season of Haikyuu, but if you'd like a bit more thorough experience, then I'd recommend you go and watch my previous video about why Haikyuu works. However, if all you want is my thoughts on the third season, then just continue ahead.
いけない。みんなの空気が重い。でも、タイムアウトはもう。下を向くんじゃねえバレーは常に上を向くスポーツだ
Sports anime have always fascinated me. When I watch anime, movies, or listen to music, I like putting myself in the place of the creators, which forces me to ask myself what prompts them to make these decisions. It's not that I think making a sports anime work is easier or harder to do than any other, it's just different. I like the idea of an anime studio being handed a manga featuring characters playing volleyball. There you go, make it work. Make it entertaining. I don't know, it's just always been so peculiar to me. Anyway, let us talk about Haikyuu. The first two seasons had 25 episodes each, which is in stark contrast to the third season's 10. This one primarily features the final match of the spring tournament, which ultimately makes this season feel more like the final stretch of a longer story, which I guess it technically is, but you get what I mean. This is in essence a 10 episode long payoff. This is where the writers show us that they actually understand the characters that they have written, while the characters themselves prove their growth and prowess. And it fucking worked. This is one of those, you know, the kind where every episode is a contender for best of the season and halfway through you start thinking, come on, they can't keep this up, there must be a slow one at some point, right? But it just remains consistently tight and compelling all throughout. I mean, I've already touched on this season twice, both in my video about anime music and in my video about the role of the protagonist, so clearly it was doing something right. It just hit the ground running and never ceased to amaze. The overall work of animation is immediately better compared to the first two seasons. Not much has changed, but there is just a bit more movement and details here and there. Whether it's due to the amount of episodes being smaller or if the animators just brought the big guns is hard to tell. All that I know is that it looks terrific. For a television anime, it is definitely impressive. Moving on to the more harmonious side of things. Staying true to the established aesthetic, composer Yuki Hayashi returns with a soundtrack just as heart-pounding as the last. In between the familiar sounds, there is a couple of tracks done in a more orchestral style than usual, and they are a worthy rendition to the score. The key word for the final match between Karusono and Shiratorizawa is balance. I have already presented various reasons as to why the show works, and with that in mind, I'll say that this season maximized the potential and polished it to a mirror shine. The focus on and development of old characters, the presentation of new ones, the flow between downtime and highlights, the mix of comedic relief and drama, the pace of the game itself, and the decision making of which moments to end off each episode with is all near perfect. Every moment falls comfortably into the next, and it's a great testament to the pitch-perfect direction. A lot of work was put into making the established setting and spatial relations on point and easy to digest. The game itself got a lot less flair and stylized moments than the previous ones, yet it's still the most exciting by far due to all the elements already mentioned. What is most commendable is the fact that you don't even notice much of the intricacy because of how simple and clean it all feels. It manages to be a show you can follow intensely with a critical mindset, and one you can just lean back and relax to depending on either your mood or what mentality you're viewing the show with. At this point in the story, several characters have already found their place within the narrative. Because of this, Yamaguchi, who we looked at in the previous video, Oikawa, Kageyama, Daichi, Asahi, Koshi and Hisoka all take a step back to a supporting role, leaving the spotlight to other characters. A fun detail though is how both Nishinoya and Ryunosuke gets just a tad bit more to do, which makes sense because they're second years and thus have things to learn for the days the third years have graduated. The main focus, at least in terms of character writing, is surprisingly on Tsukishima, who definitely serves as the MVP in both the game and the season. I will talk more about him later. He is closely followed by Hinata and several of the new characters on the opposite side of the net. You've probably noticed this by now, but there is an ingenious parallel between the characters' roles in the game itself and within the narrative of the story. Whether it be in the actual game, on the bench, or in the cheer stands, every character tie in with the narrative in some way, shape or form. If there is one place where some viewers might get turned off by Haikyuu, it could be in the department of depth. Or at least depending on your definition of depth. Don't get me wrong, it's not as though the show isn't layered with themes which are well portrayed through its characters, and it's not that the cinematic elements are not used to their full potential in order to aid the story. There is symbolism to be found, but that's always some kind of imagery that either expands or reveals some trait to one or more characters. In other words, everything in Haikyuu revolves around the characters and their story, and because of this, one could say that it is quote-unquote just a show about boys playing volleyball. It's not like there is some hidden political, environmental or philosophical messages in the way the characters play, if you get what I'm saying. I'm personally completely fine with that, but some viewers might want to be challenged a bit more on that side of things. This is a character-driven narrative where you fall in love with them, you follow them, have fun with them, and ultimately gets inspired by them. As I've already mentioned, none of the episodes leaves you without something to get your heart pounding, and this is where I don't really want to spoil too much, so I'll just pick a few examples, okay? First of all, Tsukishima reaches the climax of his own narrative as he finally learns and accepts some very important parts of himself. I will not spoil what, but I can say that when the guy was first introduced, all we saw was a snarky brat serving the only purpose of catalyzing Hinata and Kageyama's resolve, and now he is one of my favorite characters in anime and probably the best in his own show. Now, a traditional from obnoxious to likable character arc isn't anything new, but the other character elements that I've already discussed, plus the subtlety that is the attitude of Tsukishima, help selling it. He also ended up executing one of the best shonen cliches that I've ever seen when he returned to the game as the unsung hero. Goku would have been very proud. I think that the best way to round this up would be to exemplify exactly how spectacular some of the shot compositions actually were. I mean, I did bring up a term as showy as spatial relations before, so I might as well back it up a bit. But seriously though, look at this. Asahi, Suki and Daichi all run in for a 3-person block. Wakatoshi slams it diagonally into the opposite side where Kageyama parallels it to the outside right. Daichi picks it up, sends it across to Asahi who tries spiking. It gets repelled to the back where Ryunosuke picks it up, and finally a split screen sends the team off to a synchronized attack. Now, I would have to ask you not to get too distracted from how absolutely gorgeous this rotation shot looks. Don't worry, I know it's hard, but we will get through it together. Just step back and think about how easy it was to follow the events of these plays, and also how action-packed it all was, in spite of not actually doing anything that was particularly impossible or unrealistic. I asked before what a studio would have to do in order to make volleyball look exciting, and this right here is the answer. This is when directing and shot composition triumphs. It has been a long time since an anime has kept surprising me this positively with every episode it produced, and I cannot wait for the next season. Don't worry, I do read the manga, so I do know that it's not just going to crash and burn in the next arc. Wow, imagine how awkward that would be after all this. Woo. The third season of Haikyuu turned out to be the best anime I saw in 2016, and I know that sounds ridiculous when you think of what it's about, but then again, that's sort of the charm with these lovely Japanese cartoons. See ya! Thank you so much for watching these videos. The next one will not be about volleyball, I promise. More people are contacting me to say that they don't see my uploads on their feed, so if you want to make sure that that doesn't happen, then click that bell. Besides that, please like, comment and subscribe, it all helps a ton. I hope you all have a lovely day. See ya!